All right. Well, hi, hello, and welcome to How to Equip Pharma Reps with HCP Event Insights with the SpotMe and Onomi Sync App for Salesforce. Now, today's exciting webinar is sponsored by Onomi by SpotMe and Salesforce and produced by SmartBrief. My name is Jess Steinbach with SmartBrief, a future B2B company, and I'm so happy that I get to be your moderator for this conversation today because we get to talk about something that I am truly and genuinely passionate about, and that is creating impactful events, whether they are virtual or in person, standalone, maybe ongoing programs, designing experiences that enable effective knowledge transfer strategies and help tell stories and connect people to the information they need. This is all so important. And today, we are especially zooming in on how you can use event data and automations to create meaningful HCP engagement. With the help of our two expert presenters, who I will introduce in just a moment here, you will gain important insights and determine key action steps to do more with your event data and engagement tracking, improve that scalability, and drive commercial success. That is a lot to be excited about. You see why I'm in a good mood this morning, and we have some great conversations ahead. So I am going to zip through just a few housekeeping points to help us get the most out of our time here together today. We're going to kick things off. We're going to take a little bit of a tour of your audience console. If you haven't started clicking around already, now is the time. Start exploring. Let's start out together in the questions window, because the best part of a webinar like we have in front of us today is the chance to ask questions of the wonderful experts that we have here with us. So you want to make sure that you're getting those questions in, all your ideas, all your stories, all your thoughts on life. We want to hear from you, and let's kick it off right now, if you haven't already done so, with a little hi. Give us a little hello. I see we've got Ben and Gilbert. We've got Paul bringing the Tuesday vibes. We've got Helena from Sweden. I like it. All right, we've got a whole awesome crew here with us. Keep those highs and hellos coming as we go through our morning together. And definitely make sure that you're getting those questions in. Now, that tab is also going to be the best place to reach out to our crew if you are having any trouble today. I want to remind you, though, a browser refresh is going to clear out most of the usual tech gremlins that can get in our systems from time to time, right? The have you tried turning it off and on again is a browser refresh. If that browser refresh does not work for you, you can post a message there in that questions window, and our team will be there to help you out. All right, so let's take one hop over from the questions window. We're going to spend some time in the handouts tab. Oh, I love all the highs and hellos coming in. We got Chicago, we got Lisbon. All right, very nice, very cool. All right, so next stop you're going to visit is the handouts tab. Make sure you've clicked in, start exploring. There's some cool resources for you to take away after we wrap up the webinar today. Speaking of which, it is not just awesome content that we have for you today. We also have a $250 Amazon gift card as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar, so stay tuned for that. Of course, you do need to be here in live attendance at the webinar in order to qualify to win that prize, and all winners must meet the SmartBrief prize terms and conditions. If you are not sure what those are, you can find the full T's and C's. Remember that handouts tab that we were just chatting about? Click back into the handouts tab and you will find them all waiting for you there. All right, well, I'm going to introduce our speakers, and then we're going to play a fun little interactive game here in just a second. All right, so I'm very excited to introduce you all to the wonderful speakers that we will be hearing from today, and that is Pierre Metrallet, CEO, Onomi by SpotMe, and Helen Tinsmann, Senior Manager, Sales Enablement, Advanced Bionics, NA. So we are going to chat with Helen and Pierre in just a moment here, but before I bring them out, I've got a question for all of you, and this is going to help our speakers make sure that they're hitting you in your biggest needs, right? This is what we want to get into today. So there's a poll question up on the screen, and what we want to hear from you is, what's your biggest challenge in managing HCP event data? What is the biggest roadblock, the biggest obstacle that you are facing today? Now, we're going to leave this up for a little bit here because we want to give you time to answer. And I know that there could be a few challenges. Hopefully it's not all of them. Hopefully there's one that's really jumping out for you. But that's what we're going to get into today, is helping you solve some of these challenges. And to help us do that, I'm going to bring Helen and Pierre on out here with me. Helen, Pierre, welcome. Great to have you guys with us. Oh, we've got Helen's camera is not showing up for me. Helen, hang on. I'm going to take you out and put you back in. Oh, okay. We're going to give Helen a little browser refresh. While Helen's doing that, Pierre, welcome to the stage. There we go.
Hello, and Helen is here. Just as it happens. Thank you, Jess. Love the energy, but that's big shoes to, for me to fill in. Here we go. Okay, so just in a nutshell, as we get started and we're waiting for, for people to share what their biggest challenge in managing HCP event data, what I just wanted to give you is a quick, introduction of what Onomi by SpotMe is. And so I'm just going to share some of the stuff that we do. So Onomi by SpotMe is an event-centric customer engagement platform specifically designed for life sciences. And it's sort of like one of the only platform out there that's been designed from the ground up for life sciences. And people always ask me, like, why? What's so different with life science? Well, I suppose everyone who's joining today from the audience will probably agree with me that life science has very specific needs, which typically include compliance, which typically include very specific ways of engaging with healthcare professionals and potentially with patients, which also specifically have some specific tool set, like their own CRM, their own marketing tools. And this is the reason why we've decided to go and build this platform, which cover every part of the event engagement lifecycle, starting from the CRM, which is what we call HCP 360, going into omnichannel and all pre-event, post-event marketing activities, going into the nitty-gritty of managing the event, setting up logistics and finding the place where the event will be and managing budgets, to actually creating engagement, which is what we're doing here, with polls and with Q&A, and then bringing this back into compliance and hopefully sorting compliance before it actually happens and reporting on that in terms of cost, transfer of value, and all these different things, that makes, life science events a little different from any events. And we've been doing this for quite some time, and we have about 15 of the top 20 pharma companies on the roster, a couple of medtech companies. We're super excited to have Helen from Advanced Bionics and Sonova on the show today. Now, one of the things I wanted to share is what's different and what's unique here. So I could tell you, SpotMe and Onomi are one of the leaders in the space, but I will turn to research analysts from Forrester and from Everest, who are covering. Forrester is covering very much the general event tech space, and Everest is covering the customer engagement space in life science. And what they've said and what they've shared in their research, and this is 2024 research, is that Onomi and SpotMe have a very strong vision around being CRM first. And this is good because this is a Salesforce webinar, so I guess it makes sense. And what we also have heard from research analysts is that the idea that we are going very deep into integration. So we're not only thinking how do we connect to the CRM, but how do we feed the CRM with as much data as possible and as much as insightful data as possible, so that marketing and sales and commercial can make good use of this data to do meaningful event follow-up activities. So we'll go into that a little more detail. And before we go, into the meat of what events and life science events are, we look at the landscape. And this is one of the reasons why we decided to go and build a life science specific platform. It's because it's actually so sophisticated in terms of different types of engagement, ranging from, the booth at a convention or at a conference, to an industry session at a medical congress, to advisory board, to webinars, to field-led meetings, and potentially speaker programs or field-led or speaker bureaus, as they're being called at some places. And all these different events are actually a huge part of the overall omnichannel strategy in most life science companies. I like to say, and this is how I'm going to conclude, events are the richest channel in customer engagement in life science today. However, very often it's run by hobbyists. And one of the things we're going to hear today from Helen, and this is why I'm so glad that she's on the show, is that she is really one of the pros who've understood how to do this right and at scale, and then have tremendous benefits from executing events that way.
I love that. And Helen, you're getting a big intro. We're very excited. You are the big reveal today. Pierre, I'm going to actually put the poll back up now as well, because I'd like to give anyone who missed before a chance to fill that out. And then in just a second, we are going to show you what you've all said. So please do, if you missed it before, click on the poll right now and we will share those results with you. But Pierre, you were kind of hitting on this a couple of times and identifying maybe what some of the importance of, and I have to say, I mean, obviously I'm here, this is my life. I think that any type of event, and especially these mixed mediums, having a live event that has a virtual add-on, or having a virtual event that has a white paper follow-up, whatever it is, I think these mixed mediums are so important, but they are complex and they do require some extra planning. So this is where I would assume a CRM would be vital. Can you talk to us a little bit more? You were kind of touching on that in your intro, but why is a CRM integration so important for life sciences events?
Yeah, if you're not sure why, you should ask the question to the people who are actually running these events. And today, 99% of them, they still deal with spreadsheets. And they still live with spreadsheets where they will tell you, these are the people who registered, these are the people who actually attended. And I'm talking, it could be a webinar, it could be an in-person meeting, it doesn't matter. Spreadsheets are everywhere, and they're killing the art of running an event that's effective. And why? It's because no one is going to look at that spreadsheet after the event. And you can send it to commercial, to marketing, they're going to pretend to look at it, but in reality, they're just going to put it aside. The beauty of bringing this stuff into the CRM is that you bring it to the place where people actually do their jobs. Because CRM is also where marketing is going, if you connect Marketing Cloud to Salesforce, this is also how you can personalize your follow-up. You can have different cadences. You can have like thank you email for those who attended and we missed you email for those who did not. But you can also start, separating in different audiences, like who is the most mature audience based on the engagement or based on the question that people just responded to the poll we've had. We would be sending different follow-up and thank you emails based on that. And that's the reason why you want to capture this and put it in your sales and marketing stack, which in this case is the CRM. But you also want to make sure that your sales reps, your commercial, and in the case of life science, your medical reps are involved in events. Today, they're being, kept in the dark. They know somebody is running these events, but nobody's like telling them what happened. You have to think the way to figure this out is HCPs, when life science companies are talking to them, they know that you are trying to sell them something. So they put up this defense up, and they're like very resistant and they're kind of skeptical. Yeah, that sounds interesting, but that's big pharma, selling to me here. And the beauty is an event is different, is really sense as medical education. So these defenses are down, and they're very much welcoming this as for what it is, a medical education activity, a training, whatever is the objective. And this makes it much more effective. And this is a unique opportunity for reps to leverage the insight, what people have said, what their concerns, what's the question they've asked, which part were the most interesting, which event they actually attended, which events they actually said it was relevant, which events they requested the slide for. These are all connection points as I'm calling those HCPs later on for, in-person or sales calls or remote calls. These are things that I can talk about, and that's incredibly important. And there's very, very few people who are doing it today.
You're absolutely right. And that personalization is so important. I was just laughing because one of our audience members said, well, I'm not a mature audience member. My wife tells me all the time I'm childish. So Stephen, you'll get crayon drawings in your emails. We'll send you all cartoons as follow-up. But that kind of personalization, I think, is so vital, and it really does help you stand out. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to sort of grand reveal the results from the folks in our audience and what their major challenges. But before I do that, I'm going to put our wonderful experts on the stand. Helen, I'm going to start with you, and then Pierre, I'll ask you. What do you think? What would you expect to see, Helen, is the number one challenge in managing HCP event data?
Well, if the audience is anything like our company and what I was experiencing, the manual data entry is really going to be a sore spot for them. That was a real challenge for us. So be curious to see if the majority agree with me.
If that lines up. Yeah, those spreadsheets. Yeah. Pierre, what do you think? Is that going to be the number one?
Well, you heard my rant on Excel, so manual is definitely one, but I will also vote for, people not using the data, reps, commercial reps, not knowing what was said and what was the engagement.
All right. Well, the big reveal, folks. Let's see where you all sat. Okay, so Helen, you are right smack dab in the middle of the major problems. Your organization is not alone. So Helen, looking at that, is that kind of what you would have expected to see?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I look at all of these and each of them resonates with me to some extent. But the manual data entry and Pierre, what you were saying about those Excel spreadsheets, I just have to laugh because we have so many of those. And if I never see an Excel spreadsheet for an event again, I will be thrilled and happy to say we're not using them anymore. So hopefully others will learn from this.
Luckily, Pierre is working to make your life easier. Helen, I have a follow-up question for
Absolutely.
you, but Pierre, I'm going to ask you, does this line up with what you would have expected to see? What do you take away from these results?
So I was just before this webinar, I was in an in-person customer meeting, and of course the Excel spreadsheet. So I did my little pitch just like the way I did now, and I was being told, no, we're tracking data. It's all in Excel. Fine. And then I asked the next question, what do you do with it? And it's like, yeah, we submit it as a ticket to IT so that they can, import it in the CRM. Yeah. And that's great because that's great intent, right? But there are ways in 2025, to streamline this and also to make it, because the process apparently takes about 2 to 3 weeks for somebody to pick up that ticket and then integrate it and then do the actual import. And so this is just a little sad because people have moved on, right? An event creates momentum and you have to use that momentum within the next, couple of hours, couple of days just after the event. It's not a matter of weeks. And so time is of the essence here. And this is why you need an integration, and that integration needs to be live and needs to be instant.
Boy, I think that's so true, that real-time response, and the way that you phrase it is perfectly. An event has momentum and you need to capitalize on that momentum while it's fresh. You need to keep rolling. So a week or two's delay in the grand scheme doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but you can lose all of that red hot connection in that time. And so timing, I'm hearing, and being able to take action right away, automations, all of these are sort of major challenges. Helen, I'd like to bring it back around to you and the experience that you had. You've kind of talked to us a little bit about your love for spreadsheets, which I can, What is, Helen, in your opinion though, and based on your experience, what do you think were the main challenges that Advanced Bionics were facing before integrating event platform closely with Salesforce?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of our biggest challenges was the time spent on the manual data entry. Not only were our admins spending time, but then our sales team was spending time trying to figure out what events people had attended, what they were interested in, what they were talking about, what the most appropriate follow-up would be. Mm-hmm. As Pierre said, if you don't have that information, you're not making meaningful connections with them. And so that was really a struggle, just all of that manual data entry and not having things in a timely manner.
That's huge. And you put so much, we all know how much energy goes into to the event, and to put that much into the event and then to not necessarily have the speed that you're looking for. I would also assume there's an effect with accuracy there too, if you have a manual component.
There absolutely is. So, sales reps, admins, everyone is busy, right? And if you're having to put in something manual, you are limited to, or you're reliant on other people putting in information and prioritizing that. And we know that anytime there's manual entry of anything, there's bound to be discrepancies. And so that really affected us in that we couldn't be 100% certain of the data that we had. And for those joining me, I'm sure you'll agree, when you're making business decisions, looking at the effect or the impact of events, what you're going to do going forward, you need to know that you have good data to back up those decisions.
That's so important. And Pierre, I'm going to do two things right now. One, I have a question for you, but two, I'm going to change our slide because I do want to point out to everyone that we have this wonderful handout and takeaway from the conversation here. So grab your phones real quick and scan that QR code, but don't dive into it just yet. Don't start reading just yet, because we've got, I know you're all so ready to get into that. Because what I want to do, Pierre, is sort of switch around, listening to what we're hearing from Helen, and what we've seen from the audience in the poll. whole, there are a couple of challenges that I think I'm hoping you can give us some solutions to. So let's walk through, how does the SpotMe Sync app address some of those key challenges that we heard from Helen and that we saw from our audience that probably a lot of life sciences companies are experiencing?
All right, let's do this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you how this works, and I'm going to share my screen. And at this point, you should be able to see my
Looks great.
App Exchange screen. Is that?
We gotcha.
Is that okay? Okay, very good. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to, I mean, this is a Salesforce webinar, so I'm going to go on the App Exchange, and actually this is where it starts. So the SpotMe Onomi Sync app for Salesforce. And by the way, SpotMe is the non-life science app, and Onomi is our life science app. So it's at the same place, and this is where you can install. It's a managed package. And once you've brought this into Salesforce, it will bring a couple of tabs and a couple of custom objects and actually some pretty nice code that helps with all the automation and the problems that Helen's described. By the way, people always ask us, if you think of a large enterprise Salesforce implementation, how long does it take? Actually, in our white papers, we have some guidance, a couple of days of sandboxing and user acceptance testing and configuration is typically what it takes to get it up and running. But I'm just going to go ahead and, share my Salesforce sandbox here. And I'm going to start from I would say, rep perspective, who is just browsing, the CRM. They probably have other things to do, but for argument's sake, let's assume we have one rep here who's like thinking, okay, well, that's interesting. I'm going to meet Mr. Redfield. Actually, I have a meeting with Mr. Redfield, who is an HCP, tomorrow. And so the first thing we wanted to share is that the way the SpotMe and Onomi Sync App work is that it actually brings all your event data into your CRM, but in a way that doesn't clutter your CRM data. So it actually creates all sorts of shadow objects that are available if you want to report on them, but they don't necessarily go and pollute your existing contact leads and accounts. It can connect to them. We'll see in a minute how it does that. But by default, it takes all the event data, brings it into the CRM in those shadow objects, which are all called SpotMe something. And then you can decide, okay, how do I connect and how do I make related lists? So this is what's happening here. And to contact, I see that Chris Redfield was actually a SpotMe attendee. So that's the related objects being created to 2 events, okay? And these are actually 2 very different events. And I'm just going to go ahead and see a little bit more, what's in there. And the first thing here to think is, as a rep, I actually have all the information about, when the person attended, what was by the way, was this person at registration time? Because we know often people register with other email addresses that we know them as, and we'll come to that later, on how this all works, because there's quite a lot of science in there. But in this case, the system was able to match, and it was probably matched based on the email. This was a virtual attendance. And this is what a lot of event platforms and integrations will claim to do, meaning I can connect and can tell you who came to my event. Now, this is what really makes SpotMe and Onomi different, is the depth of the engagement data. So I'm going to go ahead and go in SpotMe attendee activity. And you can think of anybody who is on this platform, on this webinar today, and imagine all the things you've done, like clicking, downloading this white paper, watching the slide, responding to the poll, perhaps asking some questions. Here we're seeing exactly that. And this actually was a virtual event where we see all the activities with extreme granularity on what happened. And now imagine if I'm the rep and I'm going to meet Mr. Redfield tomorrow, what I have all these things I can talk about. I can see, okay, this is the question that, that this person asked. So I can literally, go in my field visit and bring up, with an answer, or with some sort of, detailing that will support an answer. But also we can go even more granular. In this case, we have the feedback forms, which will actually be completely, in great level of detail, linked and made available to me. So I know, hey, this person would do you feel better equipped? So yes, this person is actually in a positive mood to, vis-a-vis our own product. And yes, I'd like to have more Q&A. So I have extreme feedback with a great level of detail. And to my point earlier, all this data is useful for me as a sales rep. But imagine that if you're running a marketing cloud instance that's connected to Salesforce, which is the majority of what people are doing in life sciences, this is also great for marketers. You can start segmenting your post-event marketing, not only based on whether the person attended or not, but like how the person feels about all of this stuff. And you can go in extreme personalization level. Now I'm going to go ahead and just check, because this person actually had attended 2 events. So this was a virtual event. Now this is a satellite session at ASH. So this is more like an in-person event, or satellite and probably a booth at ASH. And I'm just going to see, yes, he was matched. So he was like reconciled with the master data. And here we have different types of activity, because this is in person, right? So there was an appointment. Actually, there's a note from the person who actually had the appointment. He wants to have a follow-up session on this product and on this unmet education need. But also he was scanned at the booth by John Taylor, who was the rep that happened to me on the booth. So here I have, again, this extreme granularity that provides clarity on like exactly what happened on the journey that this person has gone through for this specific event. Okay, so we have limited time, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump into maybe something else where this is the event view, and again, I'm still the rep here, right? I'm showing you what happens once the event has taken place. We won't go into the nitty-gritty of the execution. We'll go a little bit into the administrative part, but this is me as a rep looking at this event, and that's perhaps before the actual event. And so I have, again, all the information. I can even like have access without having administrative access to the event platform. I see what's the registration page. If I wanted to share it, more on this later. I also would be able to access the event console, which is on SpotMe and Onomi Backstage, where I can manage the event if I have the access rights to do so. But most importantly, and this is one of the things that people forget all the time about, is why don't you involve your reps in a very coordinated way in recruiting and sending registration and invitations to your event. And so we have this built-in registration tool here that's attached to the event. And this is for me as a rep. I can say, okay, I'm going to go into all my leads and I'm going to say, well, I'm responsible. My territory is actually, what state? My territory is NC, North Carolina. All right, so, okay, I only have one lead and a state, but okay, fine. I'm just going to go ahead, add selected record. And I could by the way, I could mass send invites here. And this is, again, me as a rep. So everybody can send their own invites without having to send this not so personalized emails manually and then make mistakes and then, not knowing exactly who was invited. And I can register it. And here I have a whole bunch of options. So I can send an email directly from Salesforce. I can silently force register the person, send an RSVP. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to say pre-register and say that I will send a registration confirmation. I actually have all the Onomi event email templates that are available here. And I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm just going to say, please make sure you register, or we've registered you already, or whatever the email template. So this is how I could sort of like handle registration. And I can do this at scale here, very quickly as a commercial or as a medical rep. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead and jump into how does this work. And what you've seen is that SpotMe Onomi is actually its own app on this Salesforce instance, and that's really how it works. It brings its own objects, its own tabs, but in reality, it operates completely silently on the background. So I can show you a little bit how it works. So one of the first things that we've learned is that when you have an event platform and when you have a CRM, the biggest problem is people, like, if they have to do any manual step to bring events into the CRM, they're not going to do it, because like synchronization and integration, I don't know for you, but for me, it always seems like it's going to be a problem. So the way this works is that it happens in the background and it happens automatically. And this is what we call automatic event intake. And the way it's done is that you will set some filtering rules. So in this case, I'm going to say that all the Onomi platform events that are marked as external, they will automatically, audience marked as external, they will automatically get pulled in the background in real time from the Onomi backstage into Salesforce. So that's the first thing. So we bring all the events. And as I said earlier, all these objects and all this data are shadow objects that will populate in your Salesforce instance, but it will not pollute and it will not override. It will not like create, leads and contacts that you don't necessarily want. So the first thing is bring all the objects and proxy the data into your CRM so you can really start doing some good work in there. Now, the question is, okay, what happens now that you've brought the data in? And this is where mapping and matching actually come into play. So you can imagine what mapping and matching is. But just to be very clear, first of all, I want to insist, in life science, we see all sorts of very different, I don't want to say exotic, but very different object setups. So it's not like this works with contact and this works with leads and that's it. But it's also that this could be any object, could be accounts, or it could be any custom objects, which I think in the case of Helen, she's using this quite extensively. But I'm going to go ahead here and show what it means, if I'm doing this against leads. So here we already have a mapping that's in place. So what we can do here is we could add more mappings. By the way, I could add other objects here if I'm using a custom object. But I'm going to look at that. How do we connect fields, between Onomi fields and Onomi activity fields into Salesforce fields? And this is specifically in terms of leads. So this is how it works. And I have to define like what happens, right? Is it on a create? A create is going to create a new attendee, is going to update a new attendee, and then which fields are going to be connected one with another. Now the question is obviously, okay, how do you decide, that John at Onomi.io is the same as John Mr. Nobody at hotmail.com, which is the email address that I could be using, and that's not the email that I'm using in the system. So this is where matching comes into play. And here we have super simple, I would say, matching rules where, in this case, we've essentially said, okay, we can chain rules. I only have one for now. But what we're doing is that we essentially say you only match on email. But what a lot of people do is that they say, well, if email fails, then try first name, last name. So this is where I will go and basically set my field rule selection. And if first name, last name fails, because it's quite rare you have the exact match, maybe you use first name, last name, and zip code, for example. And it's not rare that a lot of people will have 6, 7 matching rules that will be here available so that you can make sure you have the maximum event reconciliation. Now, maybe one last thing as we wrap this, and I think Helen will talk a little bit about it, campaigns. So obviously a lot of this is how can we run attribution? How can we understand the impact of our event? So the way it works here is that campaigns, which is the native Salesforce campaigns, can have this linked events that we actually bring. So I don't want to get too much into the detail, but this is how you can basically bring your events into a campaign and basically run proper in-depth attribution that makes sense, especially if you are trying, like a lot of people doing today, showing the value and the ROI of events to your leadership. So here we go.
Nice. Amazing. That is so cool to see that in action, Pierre. And I want to thank you for walking us through the back end, as well as kind of walking us through some of the challenges that you're helping solve for people. I think here I was laughing at the, if it's not automated, we won't do it. We all have the best intentions, right? Yeah, I'll update that spreadsheet. I'll load that data. But, it slips off the radar, and then a week later, you haven't done it.
Well, you've got to ask Helen how many events she runs a year. That number is large. It's big number, and this is where automation is. You don't have a choice. It's just you want to have the manpower to do it.
Yeah, that's huge, and taking that weight off. And Helen, I'm assuming, and actually, Helen, I want to ask you. We're going to get the fact check. We're going to fact check Pierre because I want to ask you. What was the reality of your experience and how SpotMe helped solve some of those challenges for you? And I'm guessing that there's also an element of the folks that work for you. people who are involved in events generally are very passionate about events, right? We get to see connections forming in real time. We get to see people, getting information that they needed, somebody telling a story that they needed to tell, whatever it is, that's real human impact and human connection. And I think that we love what we do, and we want to do more of that. We don't want to be doing a lot of the behind the scenes and the admin stuff that makes it all possible and makes it so valuable. We want to be doing the event stuff that we really love. So I'm guessing that some of your team members are loving the space that it's opening up in their day to do less administrative side and more of the event side. But I'd love to hear a little bit more from you on how that's impacted you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the integration has significantly decreased the amount of time that we're spending on all of the prep and the admin piece of it, and really allowing our sales team to, exactly what you said, they love hosting events. As Pierre alluded to, we host a lot of events. Our North America team, we host on general between about 20 events a month. That can range from in-person to virtual. We do B2B and B2C events. Our staff love hosting the events. Just as you mentioned, just getting people together to share their stories, whether it is the people who already use our product sharing with those who are considering why they want to do it, or a group of professionals coming together to do ongoing education, learn about what the hot topics are in our industry at the time, and connect with each other. That's what our teams love to do. They don't enjoy filling out spreadsheets or entering data manually into CRM, or trying to look all different places to find the information that they need. This integration has really helped our teams, and I am regularly getting feedback from our teams on how much they enjoy using the Onomi platform, because it has given them back so much of the ability just to focus on the execution of the live event that they're doing and really engaging in that, but still giving them all the tools they need.
And the sales team too, right? Like, I mean, the folks that are involved in the event, but also the folks selling the event.
Yes, our sales team, so we might be unique in that we have a lot of admin that's helping set up the events, but our sales team, for the most part, for many of our events, they're the ones actually executing the events. So, and our sales teams love that event execution and getting together with the event attendees. And so that's what they want to focus on. They don't want to spend their time doing the admin piece of it, or looking different places to get the information on, if any of the people, the one benefit too is that they can now see if somebody in their region maybe attended a different virtual event in another region, they can easily go into the CRM system and see who attended what event and what their engagement was.
Yeah, your warm lead pool gets that much bigger, which makes everybody's life better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Helen, I'm wondering if you can shed some light on, my guess would be, okay, so sometimes with events, there's lots of tangible data, and Pierre just walked us through a ton of tangible data, which is great. But I think sometimes we think of them as being intangible, right? It can be hard to trace the data all the way through, because sometimes it's a longer decision. Sometimes you're nurturing a relationship for a while. Mm-hmm. So sometimes with the higher ups in our organization or with leadership, I don't mean to say that you're convincing of your value, but it can be harder to define the value. Have you found some value add with being able to have this data instantly and effectively and able to kind of bring that reporting to them?
Absolutely. And you're very right in that, the sales process can take months. Sometimes, in our world where we are, it can take a very long time. And there are different points of engagement. The benefit that we have seen with this integration and what we can do with the event data that's put in our CRM system by Onomi is we can tie that directly to our leads and our customers and show leadership, this is the impact of our events. So before we were just sort of guessing or trying to follow up on all those many spreadsheets that we had to see how many people registered or how many people attended. Now we can actually say, this is the number for each of our different lead types, whether it's a B2B or B2C. This is the impact that this event has had. This is how many people engaged. This is how many people, we can see how many register, how many attend, what the engagement level was. So it is a much more complete story that we're able to bring to leadership when we're going through what our event impact is.
Pierre, before we started, I'm going to steal your question. You told me that one of the things you were really interested to hear from Helen was what she's doing, but also what she wants to do next. So I'm stealing Pierre's words now, Helen. Can you tell us where you want to go next?
Yes. One of the nice things, and as I was watching Pierre show his slides and talk, I was getting really excited because we've just scratched the surface of what this integration can do, and what Onomi can do for us with our events. And so we're looking to take that next step, and we offer lots of recurring events. So we're looking at what the integrations look like so that we can see engagement throughout all of the events that someone might attend in a series. We are starting to link those campaigns and the marketing cloud capabilities to save even more time from our field staff and admin. There's lots of things on our long-term plans, and the nice thing that I see is that I'm able to work with our IT teams and with Onomi to determine when we want to do rollouts, what's maybe coming out so that we can stagger these rollouts and really customize it to what we want to do.
Pierre, does that sound exciting to you?
No, that's really cool. And one of the things is also that we've been discussing with Helen and her team is you're getting all those insights. And, as people talk about AI and all this stuff, what we have on the back of our mind is like, how can we help reps do a better job more, I would say, automatically with assistance. And so with all those insights, like, how do I know, like, if I'm a rep and I have 50 customers who attended, this webinar, like, how do I know the 3 ones that I should really give a call like tomorrow? And that's this kind of, support that we're looking to offer, to Helen and her teams, so that they could save even more time in the process, and they can really go into, like, the top 3, the top 5, the top 10 folks, that need to be engaged, in the right time. Because again, time is all of the essence in this game.
That prioritization is more than just helpful from a sales perspective or a striking while the iron's hot perspective. I think it's also really helpful from a burnout perspective. When you think about sales teams and event folks, and what we sort of have in common is this love for human connection, which is wonderful and energizing and exhausting. And there's always a next deadline, right? There's always that next project, that next event. So being able to prioritize, I think, would really help with reducing the fatigue that you're putting on your teams, both the event side and the sales side. And so, Helen, I'm going to ask you to put on your wise sage hat now and share with the audience out there, if you had to, having gone through the experience that you've been through and now kind of seeing the benefits of that, if you had to give some advice to the folks in the audience that are maybe thinking about integrating their event tech with their CRM, what would be your top piece of advice to folks out there today?
I honestly would say, and this goes back to something that Pierre shared in earlier, is don't hesitate to talk to them, to reach out. And we were nervous that because the way we used Salesforce and we had so many custom objects, we were really nervous that Onomi wasn't going to work for us. We were so pleasantly surprised at how simple this was, and also how responsive the team was. So I highly encourage, take that step to have the conversation. Don't hesitate because you're worried of what might happen.
That's a huge impactful thing to hear. Hey, Pierre, the response back from folks that work with you is that you're responsive, that you're a team, you're that partnership. That's real impact. And Pierre, I'm sure you're blushing, but I'm gonna ask you to give the same advice. What would you say to the audience there if they're considering making this change?
Well, I think you've heard Helen saying sharing all the complexity and the level of sophistication that a large enterprise, extremely mature organization like her organization has. And then when you try to bring a system in there, an event platform in there, and you're essentially marrying that into the CRM, there are so many dimensions. And you've heard her, and this is what makes life science, by the way, so special. You've heard her saying some of the events are executing by her team. Some of the events are self-run by field reps, right? That's tough. Then you've heard her saying, some of this is in person, some of it is virtual. And then you've heard it's for marketing, but it's also for commercial. And, some of this make it super complex. And so if you go into this omnichannel CRM event platform buyer's guide, you'll see that there are 8 things that we really recommend. And 8 is not a small number. So you really need to go to those 8 things. And we are telling anybody who is thinking about replicating what Helen has shared, your system should do this. It should be bi-directional. Integration should go in both directions. It's 2025. This is what you need. It needs to be real time. We've talked, many times about how time is of the essence. People who don't think will forget about it. You lose momentum and they lose trust if, the data comes out several days or several weeks later. It needs to have this advanced field object mapping. You've heard how the Advanced Bionics object setup in Salesforce is complex. Everybody in life science has a complex object setup and has custom objects, and it needs to support this level with advanced field. And I'm not saying coding, and just to clarify, the support that we offer to Helen's organization is really support. There's no custom code here. This is all configuration driven. Bringing all the data you can into the CRM. This is what we call data proxying. And then I also mentioned how you shouldn't force people to synchronize events manually. It should happen automatically. It should have an automatic event intake. It needs to be what we call native and deep, meaning it's in Salesforce, right? It's not some third-party tool that you also have to connect. And it needs to be deep. You've seen, me going through all this little where you can really drill down, this is the question this person asked. And it needs to have reconciliation logic. And you need to see this very granular engagement data. So if we do these 8 things, you probably will have a very successful implementation.
Those are solid. 8 is a lot. You're right. 8 is not a small amount, but that's a solid list. And
we're a little intense. Sorry, Jess.
No, that's good. 8 is good. 8 is good. I can do 8 things. I can. And they're all outlined for you in that doc. So if you were trying to keep up with Pierre as he went along, just download that doc and you can kind of go back through them all. We are getting into our last 10 minutes here, which I wish we could keep going. There's clearly so much more to explore here, but we're going to start to switch into some questions from the audience. Pierre and Helen, are you guys ready to chat with the audience?
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Pierre, I'm going to start with this question for you because we get a lot of questions from folks all over the world. So we did get a question about real-time translation for any transcripts or supporting docs for events. Is there anything that we should know about multilingual approaches?
Yeah, so SpotMe and Onomi we are a very international company. So that's actually built in, and there are several options, whether it's transcription, whether it's real-time interpretation. All these options are available, and I shall mention they're available for in-person and virtual events. Now, as far as transcript is concerned, this is something that we're looking at adding into the platform very soon, into the integration very soon, meaning that not only you'll have the event, but also the transcript of the event. And by the way, this opens up a whole host of possibilities in terms of, data mining. And if you think of Einstein and Agentforce, which we're hoping to demo very soon, to a Salesforce crowd, because, this just brings the whole engagement and mining to a next level.
That's a very exciting rollout. All right, Helen, I'm going to kick one over to you. Helen,
Okay.
How do you cut through the noise of event information to ensure that you are getting additional value that you're aiming to get from that data? And then Pauline is asking for 3 successes. I'll narrow that down to 1. What's your top success that you've had since you implemented Onomi?
I think success has to start internal first before we look at external. And I would say our biggest success was the buy-in from our teams internally on the use of Onomi. Everything from backstage event setup execution to the integration in Salesforce and the data that they're able to get from it. I think without that buy-in, we wouldn't be able to go on to have the other event successes and build out the value that we do have.
I'm going to ask you to zoom in on that just a little bit more, because we did also get a question about how you've seen the impact on your team's workflows. And I think that speaks also to Pauline's question about that noise and kind of, prioritization and reducing burnout. So are there any impacts that you've specifically seen on workflow or any additional areas where you think this will help kind of streamline things, make things a little more efficient? We love that efficiency, right?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, we have a lot of our sales team members who are our sales reps who are out there actually executing the events. And then we have our event managers setting all of those up. One of the goals of my teams and one of our KPIs is to decrease the amount of time that is spent on administrative work for our sales reps so that they can focus more on their sales. With this integration, we were able to save our event reps a couple of hours a month just in the few events that they are doing on a recurring basis. I think the nice thing is that we've been able to very clearly with each of the efficiencies that we've been able to create, we can map exactly how much time it's saving us. And this event integration really is saving our teams, not only our end sales reps, but also my admin team who's creating all of the events and doing all of the back end work. It's saving us countless hours having this integration piece.
Well, that is certainly great to hear, and I love getting that real world and personal examples. Pierre, I'm going to ask you to answer this one. Why you've touched on the importance of speed with data, but we got a question from the audience saying, why is it important to have that real-time data synchronization? My current platform is running synchronization once a day. Is that not enough? What would you say back to that, Pierre?
Well, very simple. This webinar is going to end in hopefully not too long, a couple of minutes.
Are you ready to go?
To leverage the no, it's just for argument's sake. And if you want to keep the momentum, the thank you email should go out as soon as possible. Literally, like at the moment we're closing. I don't know how it's going to be. This is not me doing it, but this is how you do it proper. Now, how do you know if people have attended or not attended? How do you know if they filled in the feedback form? How do you know if they engage? Ideally, your post-event cadence would have 4 different, segments. The super highly engaged positive, the sort of passive, wasn't sure, the people who dropped the ring, and then the one who didn't show up, right? This is how you do it, like you do it 4 cadences. And if you don't have this live synchronization, forget it. You can send a thank you email tomorrow, but people have moved on. So this is one example. There are others why you need to make it real time.
You're absolutely right, Pierre, and as sad as I am to say this, we are down to our final minutes here. I'm going to sneak in one tiny last little question before we start to wrap up here. And it's because when you were talking about data proxying right there in our final 8 there, we did get a question asking if you could give us just a little bit more information about that and why it's important. Can you do that in like a minute or less, Pierre?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea behind data proxying is that which data you keep and which data you drop and which data you synchronize with your master CRM data, that's a difficult decision. Often it's a political decision. It's a decision you don't want to make at the moment you do the event. So our solution is simple. Bring everything in, put it in the shadow, and then anyone can use it when they need it, and they can run the synchronization, the mapping whenever they want. So save the data, put it in Salesforce, put it in the corner. It's almost like using Salesforce as a mini, data warehouse in a way.
Gold star. Holy cow, Pierre. I did not think you were going to keep that short and concise. Well done. Okay, well, I'm gonna ask you guys for a final thought. And what I'd love to know is if you had sort of one thing that you'd want everyone in the audience to walk away thinking about, maybe Helen, about your experience in particular, and Pierre, if you can give us sort of a final thought and then a follow-up, an action step that you'd like everyone in the audience to take. So Helen, I'll ask you to kick us off, and then Pierre, you can be our grand finale.
All right. For us in our company, customer service is so important. Not only the service that we give to other people, but the service that we expect when we're working with other teams. I would say our experience with Onomi has made this entire transition to a new platform, to integration with our CRM system. Their customer service has exceeded our expectations by far. I mean, it has made this process so simple for us and such a pleasant experience. And so I can't say enough to thank them just for all of the service that they've provided.
Oh, that's such a great shout out. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you, Helen. So maybe just from my perspective, and also to reflect on one of the things that Helen said, it's a very event planning and event execution is a tough job, and one of the things that resonated when working with Helen and her teams is how they've prioritized building dashboards out of the data that I shared earlier, and making a priority to show these dashboards to their leadership. And what we've seen, and we've heard so many stories, because I know there's also frustration with event and anyone in customer engagement meeting planning that, we're not being brought at the omnichannel table, we're not being brought at the marketing table, we're not being accepted at the commercial excellence table. When you do go with this dashboard and reporting, this makes the whole profession, makes everyone around event much, much more credible. And actually, suddenly people realize it's actually a real channel. It's actually the most important channel. And so I will encourage anyone who is having the same feeling to go and try it. Try to build your best event ROI dashboard using your event data, and use this to advance, the profession, to advance your career, and to show this to your leadership.
I think that's a fantastic next step and a really important takeaway. Speaking of takeaways, Pierre, I'm going to call out the wonderful buyer's guide that you have here one more time. Any last points you'd want to make about that? Just download it.
Yeah, all the stuff that we talked about, especially the 8 points, right, are in there in great level of details with some examples on how to do it, sample architecture, recommendation, just go and do it.
Just do it. Just do it. That's the best takeaway. Download that handout and follow up to learn more. We also are going to make sure, I know that we're not getting to all the questions today. So Pierre, what we're going to do is in real time, we're going to get all those questions over to your team so that you are able to follow up with them. So you will get responses back. So please do keep those questions coming in. We want to make sure that you get answers back to those. And Pierre and Helen, I have to say, this has been so much fun chatting with you both. I've really enjoyed hearing, especially Helen, you really bringing these stories to life. And bringing in those real world use cases is really exciting. So from one event nerd to another, thank you so much. And I appreciate you bringing your passion and joy.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
And thank you so much, Pierre. I've enjoyed learning about everything today, and I hope I get to chat with you again soon.
Thank you. It was fun.
All right, and to everyone out there that is still asking those questions, again, keep those coming in. Thanks to all of you who answered our poll. And I do want to remind you to download that handout. So that's your homework assignments. Now I will get to my final homework assignment. We have a prize giveaway. So it's a $250 Amazon gift card going to someone who is here live and present at the webinar, and maybe just a little bit lucky. So our special prize winner who is here with us today is Jose Villarreal from Illinois. Jose Villarreal from Illinois. Congratulations to you, Jose. As always, we will follow up with you after we wrap the webinar, so we will get in touch with you about that. And with that, my friends, on behalf of the Smart Brief team, I want to once again thank Onomi and SpotMe and Salesforce for making this webinar possible, especially to our incredible speakers here with us today. Pierre and Helen, you have both given us so much to think about. But of course, and as always, my biggest high fives, my shiniest of gold stars go to all of you out there for taking time out of your day to join in and be a part of the conversation today. I think today we really got to unpack some of those real world challenges, those real world solutions of the event space, live events, maybe in-person events, maybe virtual events, all of the follow-up that goes around them. I mean, this is something, well, as you all know, I eat, sleep, and breathe this. I am very passionate about this. And I think that it is so important to think about both sides of the event, the actual in the moment, and then all of things that help make that information, help make that knowledge transfer complete, which happens in follow-up, which happens in those continuing connections and those continuing relationships. And that's not easy to do. That starts with data, that starts with automations, that starts with having the right systems in place to enable your wonderful team to do what they already do and do that even more, even better, even faster, all of those great things. So I hope that you are all feeling pumped up and excited to carry the conversation forward from here. I cannot wait to see you all at a webinar again soon. And until then, have an absolutely beautiful end to your day. Thanks all.